morning.
Good morning.
One other thing I would like to do is a self-promotion, but it's really about natural law. The seventh principle in spiritualism is about making our own happiness and unhappiness as we obey or disobey nature's physical and spiritual laws. A lot of people don't understand natural law, or they understand it from a mental attitude of books, CDs, etc., which has its strength and its importance. But the importance also of natural law is understanding the energies of life. And those energies are existent in all things. You, me, the air we breathe, the seats that you're sitting on, the lights that are illuminating the room. So the wonder of spiritualism and natural law, I explored it so many years ago, and I won't tell you how many, but some of you probably weren't born yet. And I was very fortunate to train and to study under Reverend Eloise Page. And for any of you who knew her, she was quite an eloquent speaker and a very, very humble individual. But her primary focus, the many years left in her life, she moved to Casadega in 1949, and she passed away at the age of 97. During her 50-something, 60-something years in Casadega, she was one of our foremost natural law teachers, and she would teach from a point of inspiration and an inspirational speaking, just as I'm doing today. I wrote a little book. This one is not included with the other little book that's in there. I'm going to be handing this to Annette because I felt drawn to bring it today. This is a tribute to her. This is not about me. It's called Just My Notes, Dear. And in Just My Notes, Dear, it was opportunity for me to take the many notes that I had written in her classes of inspirational thoughts, of wisdoms and insights that I gained over many, many years, because there were many years I studied formally with her in classes, and many years following that I embraced natural law plus other things in my life. So this book doesn't even have a title page. It's just a tribute to her. And my hope is that if it's something that Annette shares with you, which is her job or her responsibility, and yet she might not want to, and that's her choice, is that if you open it, it's just little one-liners. So Annette, would you just open it to something and read one thought? And then I'll speak on whatever that thought is. Okay.
Life is a thing of sharing and growing.
You can keep that. Yes. So what I wanted to talk about today were leaf blowers. And the reason is because during the fall, have you ever noticed a lot of people get out and rake their leaves? And then they get the leaf blower out. And the leaf blower blows this from here over to here so that this looks cleaned off, doesn't it? And so this pile that's over here, where does it go? Well, if they are truly using their rake, they will put it in a bag and it will be picked up by the waste management people. That's one option. The other is they pick it up and they dump it in the woods nearby. Or that they pile it up on that side of the yard, which doesn't have to look really good, but they can move those leaves over there. Correct? Well, it's kind of like thought. Our thoughts are like this. So a lot of the time we have new realizations, new insights, new understandings. Excuse me. And with that, we often take some of those new thoughts and we blow them over here because they sound good, they look good, we feel new insights, new awarenesses, new understandings. But we've got this old stuff lingering in us called old emotions, old attitudes, our past, the things that have influenced us. When we were all little children, prior to the age of 5 to 7-ish years old, we were impacted by the people that we grew up with. It doesn't matter if it was just the caregivers, but they played a very important influence. But what happens is, as little people, we don't have a reasoning ability. Anybody who takes human development kind of understands this, That little 3-year-old is not responding with an adult thinking process, are they? Well, I don't know, there's some pretty incredible 3-year-olds. But what I'm getting at here is, in the leaf blower concept, is that when you're sharing in life, you're sharing you, but you're sharing you today. You all are here dressed the way you're dressed. I dressed casually because I wanted to come casually, because if you know me, I'm a much more casual person than I was years ago. Spiritualist churches years ago, just for those of you who want to know what it is to segue over here and give you a little bit of an aside, is we used to wear long gowns. And so I had a white dress made, and it was made with a cotton gauzy fabric that was almost like a canvas, but it was something that I could put on in the car when I was driving to Jacksonville to speak, and I called it affectionately my angel costume. And it was wonderful, but we don't do that anymore. We just have, Annette looks lovely in her dress, but you'll hardly ever see me in a dress. I think my legs haven't known that kind of air in a long time. But leaf blowers, see how we get back to it? Leaf blowers are incredibly significant in our own thoughts and our own minds. How many ideas have you had in your life that got blown over here because somebody else made a comment about them, or somebody else did something, somebody else said something, or it was manipulated out of your life in some way, shape, or form? I always joke and say that I wanted to be a torch singer. Some people, and that's really kind of the truth, but I make a joke out of it now because I can't sing as well. But one thing that happened was I would sit at the piano, and, you know, my parents put me through piano lessons, and so I'd sing, and I wanted to sing and play the piano in a bar. Well, this went over really well. And so whenever I would sing in our home, a lot of the time they turn up the TV in the other room. Now, that doesn't mean a whole lot to some of you, but you know, to that little girl on the piano, it gives a whole different meaning, doesn't it? So all through your life, you've had these little events that may not mean anything to any other human being, but you may have blown them over. And you know what? I ended up studying voice. And I ended up studying and working in musical theater. And I had opportunity to work with that creative part of me. How about you? Sometimes life takes these little twists and turns, and we have this thing of life where we're sharing constantly. That little quote that Annette read, that little moment of life that you're sharing today, you have opportunity to know somebody else in this room. Will you take advantage of it? Maybe not, because maybe that's not who you are, and that's okay too. But what happens is we're commingling with everything and everyone constantly. So those new thoughts, those new awarenesses, those new emotions, I follow the political scene a little bit. Some of it gets rather dramatic and some of it feels rather overwhelming. But I watch the news and then I shut it off. However, I go to all these restaurants and these places now that have TV monitors on constantly. And I have friends where they are constantly wanting to watch this while over here having lunch with me, and they're watching their cell phones. And I go, how do you do that? How do you split off the mind like that? How do you split off thought like that? And then how do you stay focused about any one thing for any length of time? And what happened to that word share? Share. Sharing, communicating, talking, eye-to-eye contact, maybe, but maybe it can't be done. Maybe it's by phone, maybe it's by Skype, maybe it's an email. I call emails one of the greatest forms of projection. And projection is that giving an attribute to something. And it's not always a truth, but it's what you think something means. So when you read an email from somebody, do you emotionally interpret for them how they felt when they wrote it to you? Well, most people do. I can't tell you how many people talk with me and they'll say, well, you know what they meant. And I'll go, oh, did you ask them? Probably not. leaf blowers. We do it all the time. So we do projections in our life. We're bombarded by the media. We have all of these things that are going on. So what happens about peace of mind? And how do you share that? And how do you share the moments of joy? And how do you share the moments of laughter? And how do you have a sense of hope? And those things, to me, laughter, hope, and joy, are what life is all about. Because we've got the drama, and we've got the challenges, and we've got the things that have interfered or seemingly kept us from some of the things we wanted to accomplish maybe years ago or maybe yesterday. Those things are gone, but what we do have is today. And another quote in that book is, you have this moment and you have the now. And what that means is that you live in the present, but you can bring the past forward as a point of reference and understanding. But you don't have to pretend it's like the leaf blower and throw it over there and then pull it back so that you feel inhibited or unhappy or sad or disappointed because of something or someone. And that occurred yesterday, or 2 years ago, or 10 years ago, or longer. We have a choice, and we always have choice. And the wonderful thing about the principles that you read is the fact that they are considered not a dogma, but they are. But they aren't a dogma in terms of you've got to do something just this way. It's your way, your way. And that's the beauty of it. Spiritualism is not just about those people who have passed away. Spiritualism is not just about the guidance that's coming from another person. You are all intuitive. You all have an instinctive portion of you. That's what nature is. It's instinctive. It's inborn. It's inbred. So when we talk about natural law, we're talking about what's instinctive, what's inborn, what's inbred within you. And the word law, and I'm quoting Webster's dictionary, by the way, when I mention nature and I mention law, law means system of control. So the controls you place upon yourself are the ones that you have as insights, and some of them are your ethics and how you live, and some of them are the morals that you've been taught by society, or that you were perhaps taught by another church or philosophy, or perhaps you were taught about from a mother, a father, a teacher, a person of importance in your past. There's a wonderful story, and it's about the little girl who grows up and she watches her mother make a roast. Is there anybody in here who, I know one person who's heard this story. Is there anybody else that's heard this story? Because I don't want to bore you if I repeated it since I'm here so often. Anyway, she gets the roasting pan and she has the roast. And she wants to try to do it herself when she grows up. And she's making this roast as a part of her family dinner as she's grown up and married and had children. So what happens is her mother had always taken the roast and cut off an end, just a small piece on the end. And the little girl had watched this. And so she did that. She cut off the end of the roast and she put it outside the roasting pan and she left it. So a little later, somebody said, "Why did you do that?" She said, "Well, my mother always did it." She checked with her mother years later and asked her, "Hey, Mom, why did you cut that end off the roast every time you made a roast?" And she said, "Well, because the pan was too small." How many truths do you have in your life, in your awareness, emotions that you've lived by, judgments that you've given yourself, because sometimes we are the hardest ones on ourselves. And how many of you have held on to that rather than blowing it away, moving it out of the picture of today because it no longer holds continuity for you, And it no longer holds a place for you to discover all that you are now and all that you want to become as you flow into the days ahead. You have this wonderful opportunity called life. And if you also look around the room, none of us are dressed exactly alike. None of us look exactly alike. None of us talk exactly alike. And none of us have the same rhythm in our walk. None of us have the same way that we blink our eyes or that we say different things. You know, when we drove in today, I saw the billboard for the plastic surgeon that has the website that says WeDoFaces.com. I don't know if it's, I think it's near Longwood on the way coming in. Anyway, and Pauline drove me in, and I said, well, I do faces. Don't you do faces? This is kind of fun. Do you have fun on the road when you're driving? Do you see things that just for a playful moment allow you the levity? Because when you do that, when you allow the spirit of you to play, you're going to allow the soul of you to create. And when you allow the soul of you to create, which is exactly what it wants to do, you will do that with the greatest gift that is yours. You don't have to do it according to somebody else. If you have truths like that roast and cutting off the end of it that are no longer yours, that they belong to someone in your past, so be it. Excuse me. And the other thing about leaf blowers and your past and the influence, hang on, I'm going to hold you in suspense. Excuse me. Is that when we talk about when I talked about we use the leaf blower to move out what we don't want. And then we have a clear path because we like it that way. And some of those leaves go here, there, and everywhere. So what happens with your emotions when you have a new thought and a new awareness and you're wanting to share it with yourself in life? I get all choked up coming to talk to you. I just want you to know that. And a part of that is because I'm playful now more and more in my life, because I recognize that we are constantly going to be moving leaves all over the place. It's where we put them, it's what we do with them, and it's the ones that no longer serve us. Your fears, your fears, your fears, your fears. What are they? And are they pertinent? Because if they're not for your physical safety or the people closest to you, then those fears are learned pattern, just like cutting off the end of that roast. And your fears are the thing that can drive you in making choices and decisions that actually will be short of the mark of what you ultimately want in your life. It's a sharing of it constantly. And it's an understanding that you can blow them out of the way, but you're going to bring them back and act on them unless you recognize that was then, this is now. Now I'm moving on to the next step, the next opportunity, and the next choice in my future. And it's your choice. And it always has been. And thank you for letting me come.